Hi, this is Chrisine Denny from Tapatak Oz, and you're listening to the Studio Success Formula.
Welcome to the Studio Success Formula Podcast, the business school for dance studio owners. And now for your host, Clint Salter.
Hi there, Dance Studio amigos. It's Clint Salter here from Studio Success Formula, and thanks for joining us on today's podcast. Today, my tap shoes are on as we are speaking with a woman who has tapped her way around the globe, teaching, choreographing, and impacting the lives of many dancers. My guest today is Chrisine Denny. Welcome, Chrisine.
Hey, Clint, how are you?
Very well, thank you. If you haven't heard of Chrisine is the creator of Tapatak Oz and possibly one of the most inspired, passionate, and determined people you would ever meet. Her tap career has spanned over 25 years and has taken her into every facet of tap, including being a teacher, performer, director, choreographer, adjudicator, columnist, journalist, and interviewer. I've known Chrisine for about 6.5 years now, and I'm excited for her to share with us some of her secrets to teach her and inspiring students to achieve their best, plus loads more. Chrisine, you grew up in a family where your mum ran her own dance studio. What qualities did your mum have as a dance teacher that has greatly contributed to the way you teach today?
That is a really good question, Clint, and I'm glad you asked that because my mum has been one of my main mentors in my own life. The biggest thing I think my mother taught me was musicality. She was incredibly musical and incredibly passionate, and whenever she taught, she was a wonderful classical ballet teacher and also a wonderful tap teacher. And she always, when she demonstrated, she'd always just have this look on her face of absolute passion and commitment and artistry and musicality. And I think that's why myself and all of her students just really developed a passion for all types of dance because of her passion. She also had incredible rhythm in her tapping, and when I look back now at some of her choreography, she was way ahead of her time in terms of her rhythmic capability and content in her choreography. Just her passion for the theatre arts in general. She also started a thing called the Queensland Young Dancers Company up in North Queensland, which brought together students in our little town of Mackay and also students in Rockhampton. And she was a founding member of the Mackay Musical Comedy Players. So she was always, and they were like put on musicals and stuff. So she was always inspiring me, not just within the tap genre, but she gave me a love and a passion for the arts in general and taught me that you always keep learning. Also, I think she always brought in amazing guest teachers. So when we were very young, we had the chance to work with people like Todd McKinney, Chris Horsey, Francois Klaus from the Queensland Ballet, Andrus Top, lots of incredible dancers who she brought into Mackay. And this is 40 years ago. So she was, again, really ahead of her time in terms of, even though she did incredible quality in her work, she taught me that you are always learning and there's always someone who can teach you something. And I've always taken that through into my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love those points. So you mentioned passion a lot there. So I mean, passion, I always say passion is one of these things that I find with all of our clients on the Studio Success Formula is that they're so driven, they get up every morning and they love what they do, and I think that's really important, as you would know as a dance teacher and would have seen it, with your mum as a studio owner that, it takes a lot of time and a lot of commitment to run a successful studio, which it sounds like your mum definitely did.
I'll tell you a funny thing I just thought of also that she taught me. Being a dance studio owner's daughter, we also got taught how to very quickly get dressed into our dance clothes in 5 minutes flat. And we also learned how to darn our own point shoes because she didn't have time to do it back in the days where children darned their own shoes. Yep. And she taught us how to turn the lights off at the end of the class and the fans and make sure all the electricity was turned off. And I still do that now when I go into other people's studios and they always comment, "What are you doing? We can do that." And I'm like, "Oh, it's just I was brought up that you turn all the lights off and turn the fans off." So that's funny too.
It's habit. So the lesson there is to have a few daughters that you can get to help you in your studio as well.
That's right.
I love it. I love it. Now, look, I'd love to know if there's a mantra or success quote that you live your life by that inspires you each day.
It is again, just so funny you asked that question, because sitting right beside me on my laptop, is a little card, like a greeting card that I bought about 20 years ago. So it looks a bit dilapidated now, but it says on the front, and this is what I follow, my whole life follows this quote, and it says, it's got a little fairy at the top with the little card, and then it says ticket to success, and then below it says, do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. And that's the mantra I've always lived my life by.
I love that. So what does that mean to you, and how have you applied that to your life?
Well, number one, being a female in Australia in tap dancing, I think that inspired me to still try and achieve in the genre of tap, even though there weren't a lot of opportunities, because it is a very male-dominated genre. So despite not being able to participate as a tap dancer in a lot of what is on offer in the Australian dance scene, I decided just to forge ahead, and I couldn't follow those people. I could follow and I was very inspired by a lot of the great tappers in Australia, but I couldn't actually participate in a lot of what they were doing. Yeah. So I had to create my own voice in the tap scene in Australia, and I was very lucky. I taught at Brent Street and ED5 for over 15 years. Well, 8 years at Brent Street and 7 years at ED5, and I was very lucky to be around so many amazing teachers who were also on staff at those places at the same time. But I very much had to forge my own niche, and then that grew into Tapatak Oz. I used a lot of drumming too, because I learnt drum kit for a while, and I brought that into at that time, nobody was sort of doing that in tap dancing, so I did a lot of choreography sort of 20 years ago that used a lot of recycled drums and things like that, and at the time that was different, and I just did it because I was passionate about it and I love banging things.
And look, so it kind of sounds like, you talked about your mum being kind of ahead of her time in terms of, bringing out guest teachers and how she ran her studio. So it seems like you've taken a lot of those qualities of, definitely of, leading your own path into what you did in the tap world. Yeah,
you've just got to... I think a very important thing somebody said to me once was at a seminar that I attended, and he said, when you go out into the world, 50% of people are going to love what you do and 50% of people are going to hate what you do. That's just the natural balance of life. And that was a really profound comment to me, and it was just before I launched Tapatak Oz, and I thought that's okay. So 50% of people are going to love what I do. And that's great. I invite them to come and be mentored by me and work with me, and it's a fantastic relationship I have with all the teachers using my system. And then there's obviously 50% of people who don't like what I do, and that's fine as well, and that's just the dynamic of life. So that's another mantra I sort of live by. You've just got to be brave and put yourself out there and do things how you think it should be done, and the people who resonate with what you're doing will come to you and you work with them. But I think it's unrealistic to expect everybody to resonate with what you do.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I was writing about this yesterday actually in an article for our clients, and I was talking about the fact that, you can't please everyone. You can't be the person that says yes to every mother, yes to every student, to just get that child into class, or to not lose that child from your studio. So I think that's a really important lesson. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, no, it is really important. And I travel around Australia a lot, and I talk to a lot of principals of dance schools, and the thing that they're always saying is how they're finding their niche and teaching dance, but they have to be true to what's important to them. So some teachers are very much about, they're very aesthetic oriented, and that's the most important focus for them. Other studios love to give everybody a trophy. And then other places I go say, there's no way we'd ever give all our kids a trophy. So people are very different, and I think it's important. You can only run your business with passion if you're true to what is right for you. And so if you're very, quality focused and you'd rather have less students in the class and you're very strict with old school values, that's great. You should do that. But if you just want to run a school that's all about fun and everybody gets a trophy, and that's a different vibe, and both are valid. You just need to choose which one is for you and then go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome advice. Now, look, I've seen you teach many times, and, the students absolutely love you. I know it's a mixture of your energy, passion, and obviously the content that you're teaching. But what else do you think makes an exceptional dance teacher?
The first thing you said is the most important, and what I've actually noticed when I teach my teachers' seminars, is getting across to the younger teachers how important your own vitality and energy is when you're teaching, and also the way you use your voice, the way you manipulate your voice. So, for instance, if I was teaching a tiny tots class, I'm very much almost like I'm being a clown, and I'm like, hey, hello, everybody, diddle-a-dum, boom, yeah, show me your happy hands. But I'm not going to say that to Cert 4 students, doing a professional level course at Brent Street or 85. I would never have related to them like that. I'm totally, okay, so now we're doing this. And, try and be sort of sassy with that and try and do this. And my whole voice and tone will totally change. So I think it's really important as a teacher to teach to the age group of the students that you're teaching. And that comes from your facial expression, your energy, and also the tone of your voice. And I think it's very important. This is an example I used recently. I think better teachers are usually those who have a bit more experience and knowledge. I think I'm a much better teacher now than I was when I started out 20 years ago. So in TAP, for instance, it's really important as a teacher to understand that different students relate and learn in different ways. So, for instance, if I took a basic exercise like stamp, 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 clap, clap, and the rhythm goes ba-da, 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 clap, clap. I might say to one student, all right, so the rhythm is ba-da, 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 boom, boom. But another kid's not going to get that. So I might say again, okay, so our footwork goes right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And then I might say to another child, okay, the counts are 1 3, 4 6, 7, 8. And then I might say, okay, we go stamp, 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 clap, clap.
Yeah. So it's just catering to, because we know that there's, the 4 core ways that we learn and students learn from us. So you're just acknowledging and taking notice and really listening and paying attention to those students so you can tailor what you're teaching to that individual.
That's exactly right. And it's so important to a good teacher is a teacher who can teach anyone, in my opinion, and who can get good results from any student regardless of their capability. Anybody can teach a brilliant person, but the real trick, I think, is being able to communicate effectively to the children with less ability in the genre in which you're working.
Have you got any other tips out there around being an amazing teacher? Because I know you are. So is there anything else you'd like to share on that topic?
You've got to be very prepared when you teach a class and be willing to what I call abort the mission. So sometimes I've gone to teach a workshop and I've prepared something, but I'll always have a little something else in my bag, like another piece of music or another option, because not all, especially in tap dancing, the standard is so incredibly varied throughout Australia and overseas as well. So what I could teach to 12 and 13-year-olds in one place, I'd be lucky for 16-year-olds to even have a clue what they're doing in another school. I'll go with, if I've never taught at the school before, I'll turn up with, a few ideas and I might start something. And sometimes, I'll just say to the kids, look, it's not you, it's me. I've just chosen, let's try this instead. And sometimes you just got to be willing to change you can't just shovel something onto the children that's not appropriate for them just because that's what you prepared.
I love that point. Take your Mary Poppins bag with you.
Yeah, you've got to have other options and you've got to teach to the class, because teaching is about the students, it's not about you. And I think that's another thing that I learned when I was a younger tap teacher. I tapped for the whole class and I remember thinking, gee, these kids sound fantastic. Wow, they've got lots of accent, it sounds cool. And then I stopped tapping and suddenly it didn't sound so good. I was like, okay, it was actually my feet I was listening to. So I learned quite early on that whilst it is great to demonstrate, it is also very, very important to stop dancing and to watch and give meaningful, insightful, helpful tips to the children that you're teaching, and always try and encourage people in as much as you can. And often the students who come across as a bit surly, the rolling your eyes sort of kids.
Yep, we all know them.
Yeah, we all know them. 2 things about those kids is, one, it's really important not to let them take over your class. You need to focus on the children in the class, not on yourself. So it's great to demonstrate, but it's also very, very important to stop and watch what the children are doing, because it's fundamentally not about you, it's about them.
Yeah, exactly.
In tap, it's really important that everybody does everything one at a time, because unless the child can do it on their own, they're really not doing it at all. And they need to understand that. I think a lot of tap classes can be a little ineffective because all the kids are just, tapping along behind the teacher, and the teacher never stops and actually looks at what they're doing one at a time. So often children have an unrealistic view of their tapping ability because they've never actually been asked to tap on their own.
Yeah, look, that's a really interesting point. I've worked with a few studio owners recently who, with their teachers, when the teacher is planning their tap class or they're doing, their Tapatak Oz exam work, that they say, well, they're getting bored with the one at a time. So how would you say in terms of, structuring that class, how can you kind of get that good mix of fun, energetic, enjoyable, and then the doing it one at a time if you've got 20 kids in a class?
Yeah, well, I always did everything one at a time when I was teaching, and I always found the kids were very engaged in the class, and I didn't have a lot of trouble with boredom. But one thing I do is a thing I call the 8 levels of tap. And that's the thing I'm passing on to all of my Tapatak Oz teachers, and it's basically explaining to the children that whereas jazz and classical ballet are very visual art forms and the technique is visually obvious, who might be the better person, in tap, a lot of the quality in tap is things that you can't see. There might be things you can hear. So I explain to the kids that while we do things one at a time, that's an opportunity for them to think about the 8 levels of tap. So they need to think about, for instance, do they have the step? Okay. Then do they have the correct rhythm? And explain the difference between the step and the rhythm, which sounds simple, but you'd be surprised the number of students who do not understand the difference between the step and the rhythm. Then the accent, where is the placement of the accent in the step? Then what is the dynamic of the step? What is the emotional connection to the step? What are the arms doing? What is the energy? Does it require high energy or a low energy? And putting all these things together. And I think the trouble is that a lot of people, when they're teaching tap, they don't explain all these levels and the texture that is that lives inside tap dancing. And so the kids are bored. But if you're passionate about these different levels and you're explaining in an excited way, wow, so is this an exciting step? Like, are we having a competition, or are we jumping over a puddle, or what's the story for your step? I need to see a story on your face for the whole step. You need to create a story. You tell me your story. You go around. That's interesting. But if you're just standing there saying, okay, one at a time, nah, yeah, that's not engaging.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I love the way that you explain that 8 levels of tap. And I think that's what a lot of tap teachers do when they're teaching exam work. They get given the syllabus to teach and they're like, okay, this is the only way we can do it. But you've just basically said that there's 100 different ways that you could engage kids.
Yeah.
For the students to be, coming out of class and excited.
Okay, so the Tapatak Oz syllabus, for instance, the reason I created that was because a lot of the tap syllabus was so incredibly dull and old-fashioned, and I wouldn't want to do it either. I mean, time has moved on, and I wanted to give teachers access to something that was exciting and was engaging and was interesting and taught people really how to tap, but in a far more creative way where the students really understand what an interesting rhythm is and how you choreograph one, and they understand cross-phrasing and syncopation and dynamics and all these things which are really fun. And they create their own rhythms in class. And so the syllabus might say, oh, you're going to do this exercise, but down the bottom it'll say, okay, you could try this starting on a different count. Or now get your students to make up their own version of this exercise. How are they doing it? What are they wearing? Even for their exam, they're to come in, or it's recommended that they come in with their own individual hairstyle and clothes. The fundamental principle through Tapatak Oz is it's not just about that. It's about embracing the whole tap community and experiencing far broader concepts of tap that everyone has to offer. Go on the internet, watch, Honey Coles and Jason Samuel Smith and Brenda Buffalino and the Tap Dogs and whoever. Watch everybody and learn.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. Again, fantastic advice. Now, look, many of my dance studio owner clients offer tap classes, but they often say that it's hard to get more students into tap class.
I can tell you why, Clint.
Go, I want to know.
The thing I have found the most is if tap is popular in a dance school, it is because the studio principal is openly supportive of tap and behaves in a way that they think tap is great and they love tap and it's funky and it's fabulous. So you need a good tap teacher who is technically great but passionate and loves tap and inspires the children to tap. You also need a studio principal who regards tap or their tap department equally as the hip-hop, the funk and everything else. If you're constantly taking kids out of their tap class to go to do ballet or to go and rehearse their jazz group for the Eisteddfod or to go and rehearse their hip-hop routine for the performance at the Easter show, or that sends a message that tap is not important. But if you and also a lot of tap classes, studios will have a 45-minute tap class. Well, that also sends a message that there's not much technique or anything to be learned here, which is far from the truth. Like seniors need a good hour and a half tap class the same as they do an hour and a half of jazz, funk or hip-hop.
Yeah.
But if your studio isn't honouring and respecting the tap genre from the very top to the timetable to the attitude of the studio principal, putting the kids in for exams. I mean, if you've got the attitude, we do ballet exams, but we don't do tap exams, well, what message does that send? It sends a message that, well, ballet is something it's important to do an exam in and have a technique in, but tap isn't. That's just something you just do for fun.
Perfect point.
Yeah, and you need it. I also think it's important to have a tap teacher. Whilst it's fantastic, I mean, I get invited in as a guest teacher all the time, and I think that's very valuable for those schools. But at the end of the day, the teacher who is there week in and week out is so important. And not only do they need to be passionate, but they need to be a committed teacher. And that is very different to being a performer who has nothing else to do and is just doing a couple of weeks teaching for you.
I love that point. It kind of touches on what I wanted to ask you about next, and that's, what should studio owners look for when they're recruiting a teacher?
I think if I was recruiting a teacher, the first thing I would do is I'd have an interview with them and just talk about tap. And I'd want to see what their passion is. When they're talking to me about tap dancing, does their face light up? Does their voice come alive with energy and passion and interest? Do they have a plan for your tap department? Yeah, it'd be great. I can really see we can do this with the juniors, and then I'm going to do this with the teens, and we'll do this with the seniors, and I'd love to get them into comps, and let's get some exams going and get their technique going. That's someone I would employ who has a vision for my whole tap department, and someone who is available for the whole year upon year. That's why I got results when I was at Brent Street and I was at ED5 for all those years. Brent Street, I was there. This is way back in the old Brent Street days, and it was run by Jackie Howard and Wayne Aspinall. I was there for 8 years, every week. I wasn't the only tap teacher, but I was there all the time. And that's why I got results, because I could build. So those kids I had when they were, 8 years old, I taught them all the way through. And you've got to have that regularity and that consistency with one person. And you're not going to get that with someone who still wants to be a professional performer. And there's nothing wrong with that. People have a right to want to be on the stage. That's a different thing. And they're incredibly valuable people to have come in and teach workshops or maybe even do choreography. But you need a stable teacher who's there week on week, whose passion is teaching.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you, and I love the point of, we kind of keep going back to, bringing in those other people that are performers or, are the personality, are the dance personality from So You Think You Can Dance that comes in and might choreograph a piece for a concert or a recital or an Eisteddfod or a festival, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But then you've got that consistency, someone that's building on technique, the skill and the knowledge of the students every single week. I love it.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I went this is many years ago when nobody knew who I was, and I went for a job interview to teach tap somewhere, and the lady actually said to me, well, can you jump up and show me some tap? And I was so shocked, but at the same time, so pleasantly surprised that she actually cared if I could tap. So I just jumped up and I was tapping. She just sat there and I just jumped up and I was tapping around,
Yeah.
showing her, proving to her that I could actually tap dance. I think it is difficult to find good tap teachers. That is a difficult thing. But I think if you have a good system in place that you're following, and you value the tap department, and you have someone passionate teaching it. If I was having someone teach tap for me, I'd be asking them, so who are your tap influences? What do you love about tap? And if they hadn't heard of like the main sort of tap people, I wouldn't be giving them a job.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, look, and that process of recruiting teachers is one we talk about in the Studio Success Formula program, but it's a really crucial process. You know, I always talk, and we're focused a lot on teachers, but I always say that your teachers are the backbone to your studio. You know.
Oh, they are. But the one thing when it comes to tap is a passion for tap comes from the studio principle. So if you schedule the tap with a proper length of class time, you put in an exam system so people can see there is a technique and there is stuff to learn, and then you have a teacher who's fundamentally committed and has a vision for your tap department. I'd be asking someone, what's your vision? What can you do for my tap department? What's your 5-year plan? You know, you want someone who wants to commit a good, 5 years to getting in, because it takes that amount of time to really build a tap department or whatever genre you're talking about. It could be you might be adding contemporary. You know, you want someone who's really committed, and someone who's got experience. I think is always, I think experience. Some of the ballet teachers I had, they weren't professional performers at all, and they were incredible teachers. And I think that's something that our industry needs to wake up and realise that performing and teaching are two very different skill sets. And maybe some people are great performers and great teachers, but some are not.
Exactly.
And that's a big thing. And the other thing actually is pay. I think another thing that is being lost is sometimes you go to places, and I've heard a lot of my contemporaries who I consider quite professional say it's very disappointing when you get offered the same rate of pay as someone with no experience who's just come out of full time. That's another way to attract better quality people, obviously, is have a pay scale. If you've got someone with 20 years experience who's known as being fantastic, then honour them and respect them by offering them more money than you would offer someone who's just finished full-time a year ago.
Exactly, and I love that point. And again, in Studio Success Formula, we have 8 levels of pay grades for our different teachers, and that's dependent on the experience they've got. And I think that's a perfect point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate that I don't really exist in that world too much anymore. I'm sort of just a sole person contractor in Tapatak Oz, and I go around and I get very well paid, of course, for everything I do. But I did have some circumstances, a few years ago where people offered me the same money as the person they just told me that they were firing someone because they didn't think they were any good, and then offered me the same money. Well, needless to say, I didn't take that job.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So I think you get what you pay for.
In everything in life, I believe.
Yeah, you do.
Christine, when it comes, to teaching students, what's the one thing you didn't know 25 years ago that you know now that you wish you knew sooner?
I think the thing that I wish I'd realised sooner is that when a child comes into a dance class, there's so much else going on in their life, and sometimes their behaviour in the classroom is not at all anything to do with you or your tap class. It has to do with what's going on in their home life, perhaps, or something that happened at school, or insecurities that they have, that they might feel that they're not pretty like the girl beside them, or they might feel, someone at school just sent them a nasty text. And just being aware that sometimes that energy that the child brings to the room, it's not personal to you. And that you can try and sometimes, like the surly kid with the, rolling their eyes, sometimes you can just go up and say, hey, I love your shirt, it's pretty funky, or just something to make them feel good about who they are, and it can just turn the whole class around.
Yeah, exactly. I love the point. We talk a lot about, the studio owners around not taking, things personally, whether it's from a parent or from a student as well. And it's the same with the teachers. And I think it's having that level of empathy as well, being able to put yourself in that child's shoes and say, stuff might be happening at home or at school. And it's not a reflection of you as a teacher or what you bring to the classroom.
Yeah. And also understanding, and this is another thing, goes to, when I've been adjudicating competitions as well, is realising that everybody has the right to dance and to enjoy dance. And some people are dancing because they want to be at a high level, but some just want to have fun, and they have the right to come and enjoy for whatever it might be. You know, sometimes I've been judging a comp and a child comes out on the stage and you can just think, wow, just the fact that they've walked onto the stage is probably the hugest accomplishment for that child, you know, and they're not going to win the competition. But for me, those moments are just as special as the amazing child who steps out onto the stage and blitzes the section and looks incredible. But because they're both achieving different goals and different aims.
Yep, exactly.
And the same in a class. So, of course, if you've got I'm very old school, and if I have kids in a competition class for competition, I'm no holds barred. There's you're here to work, it's not easy, and I want perfection. Of course, I'm pretty hard line. But if I'm teaching a class for fun, then it's fun. And I think it's important to make sure the children are in the class that suits their particular goals.
Yeah, exactly. Christine, to wrap up the interview, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I don't know. I think we've probably covered it all, but I think tap is probably a very misunderstood genre, and I just think it'd be great to see more studio principals showing a passion and a support for tap, because I think it's one of the genres that all children can really enjoy regardless of their body type.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And also, whether they're male or female, like tapping is a genre that the guys can get in and do, and they're not going to probably get as much stick for it as, you know, if they were doing classical ballet. And rhythm is a universal language, and so I think it's a very accessible genre. And there's no reason for tap not to be incredibly popular in dance schools, because, you know, you can come in your jeans and a T-shirt and be a little bit not the, you know, tall, slender ballet feet. You can have any physicality at all, and you can enjoy and love tap.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's a remarkable, inclusive genre that anybody can try. All it needs is a passion and support from the people within the studio to support it, and the people will come.
Exactly. Look, I think you've given some really amazing advice and been really inspiring, and hopefully you've ignited the light in a lot of our studio owners that are listening, who may be kind of shaking their heads and saying, you know what, I have used kind of tap as the excuse that no one wants to do tap anymore. But you're right, it comes from the top. So I'm sure a lot of studio owners out there are thinking, you know what, yeah, there's an opportunity here for me to get back my individual passion for tap, and then filter it through to the rest of the studio. Because, you know, I talk a lot about, you know, how to build a highly profitable dance studio. So if we're thinking of it from a commercial sense as well, it makes sense to be equally passionate about your different styles, because you could have a few children that just do classical ballet and do their exams, or just do their jazz classes, but there's an opportunity there to get them into a tap class as well. So, you know,
that's it. And every little girl who comes through your door might have a little brother at home, and you might be able to convince that little boy to come to ballet. But if you've got a really funky tap class happening with some cool music and a really inspired teacher, and, you know, they're drumming a bit as well and tapping, and they're dum, 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 yeah, woohoo, and, you know, it's like exciting and vibrant, then the little brother might decide, hey, Mum, that looks really fun. I'd like to make some noise and go do tap.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Look, Christine, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Now, if people want to find more about, you know, if they want you to come out and teach you a masterclass, just so everyone knows, Christine is based in Australia, in Sydney, in case you're listening overseas. I'm sure she'd love to come over to you if you're overseas as well.
Yes, Tap Shoes will travel.
Tap Shoes certainly travel, and I know yours do. How can people find out more information about you, and as well about the Tapatak Oz syllabus?
Well, it's very easy. You just jump online in the digital age to our website, which is www.tapatakoz.com.au, and Tapatak is Tapatakos as one word. Tapatakos. So tapatakoz.com.au. You can contact us there, send me an email. Obviously, all the details are there. There's lots of little clips of the syllabus there. Like I said, if you're looking just to reinvigorate your tap department and get the kids interested in coming to class, and it's very much like open free classes. Like if you didn't tell your students they were doing a syllabus, I've gone and taught guest classes and done some of the work, but not said it's a syllabus, and the kids love it. They just think it's an open, free class. So it's not your traditional sort of, stand around, boring, irrelevant tap. It's trying to make it relevant to what you would do if you did a professional gig in the senior levels,
Yeah, exactly. And look, we've got a lot of clients on Studio Success Formula that are using the Tapatak Oz syllabus, and they're using it in different ways. Some of them are doing exams with you, some of them are not, and they're using it as the content for their tap classes without the exam. So it is versatile, and I can say it's very content rich. So
Yes.
we'll definitely put the links to Tapatak Oz on the show notes for this podcast. Look, again, it's been awesome to have you on the line. Thank you so much for sharing, your 25 years of wisdom and knowledge, and really look forward to catching up with you again on the show.
Oh, it's been a delight. Clint, have a lovely day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Studio Success Formula podcast. To take your studio to the next level and beyond, head to studiosuccessformula.com.